Hey guys, how's it going this morning or whatever time it is, wherever you are? Hope everything's all good. I feel like it's been just yesterday that I gave you guys an update on what I'm doing for my top speed build contest. But time flies when you're working hard, and I definitely have been. It's Tuesday. We are exactly 3 weeks into it. And I'm just about 100 hours into the project. And I had to take the day off today because I'm just super tired. If that doesn't make sense, how I could be that exhausted from building a model, the last couple of days have been finishing work, which means lots of rubbing and sanding. And just to give you guys a little bit of an idea of what I'm up against, before I got hurt, I was a machine. I could go all day and all night, but I'm only about a third as strong as I was before that. And my biggest issue is what's called hypertonia, which is just a fancy way of saying that my muscles don't know how to relax. So I get jacked up pretty easy, and repetitive motion like sanding is pretty tough for me. But I try not to whine about it because I know what it's like to not even be able to feed myself. So it is what it is, and I just soldier on and I rest when I have to. And today's a good day for that, and a good day to make an update video. So anyway, what I'm going to talk about is finishing work. And that's what I'm deep into right now. And here's the little Reno racer as she stands today. And there's a number of things that I can talk about that hopefully you'll find informative and interesting. The first thing you'll probably notice is that she is all black. I mentioned last week that I was going to use All Clad's micro filler primer, and that is this stuff right here, which I actually got by accident. This is the 309, and I'm really glad that I did accidentally get it. I bought it when I was trying to get the gloss black base for doing the aluminum finishes. And the stuff is great. It's a traditional lacquer primer, which means that it stinks to high heaven, as Paul says. But it is a real primer. It does all of the 10 jobs that a primer should do, and does them beautifully. And I've been making good use of that. I would not normally probably use it, but the paint that I'm going to use on this project is all going to be lacquer based, and it's pretty hot. So I've got to have a good coating to protect the styrene. And even though I don't want this thing to just be completely devoid of panel lines and detail, I do want it to be pretty smooth. It's going to be a high gloss finish. So there's going to be some sanding, as I've been doing, and so that's why I made the choice to use the lacquer primer, even though it's got some it's got some toxicity issues. Hopefully, I won't be growing a horn in the middle of my forehead by the time I'm done with this project. Although I've always thought that if you had a horn in the middle of your forehead, it would be kind of cool because everybody would definitely listen to you and totally remember your name. So who knows? Maybe it'll all work out. Anyway, there has been some filling, and even though this is a Tamiya kit, there's some places that needed it, and some places where I just simply made that choice because of what I'm trying to accomplish. And somebody asked on the forums not too long ago, or maybe it was on Facebook, what's the best kind of filler? And my answer was, look, there's not one single answer. It depends on what you're trying to do and what the problem that you're trying to solve is. And so at this point, I've got 4 or 5 different kinds of filler on this thing, each of which I've used for a different reason. And I thought I might cover that, just by way of, I don't know if that's information that you guys can use or what, but anyway, my old standby is Squadron Green putty, and that stuff's been around for 40 years, and it always works. It's lacquer based, I believe. I know lacquer thinner works for it, and you can add lacquer thinner to it when you want to make a sort of a thin, goopy filler that you can brush on or apply in a more precise way. But the reason that I use Squadron Green is in situations where I need a filler that's got some body to it, and when I'm going on to bare styrene, because since it's a solvent-based primer, it actually will bond chemically with the styrene, and that makes a stronger fix. So, like, I have a situation right here where there was a little bit of, you're not going to be able to see it very well, but right here at the wing root, the whole wing root was almost perfect, but there was one place where there was a mismatch between the level of the root and the wing itself, and it was, it was only like 20 or 30 thousandths, but it was still real noticeable. And I know some other people have had that problem with this kit as well. But I needed to fill that in, and I needed to feather it out, and I needed to be able to scribe the line back in when it's all taken care of. And so that's why I chose Squadron for that. I also use the green stuff to fill in the shell ejector ports and the gas cap, on the fuselage and things like that. It just always works. Now, sometimes if I want a quick and easy filler that is cellulose-based and not as thick as Squadron, then I'll use the Tamiya White because it does go down real nicely, but it hardens up pretty quick and it doesn't scribe quite as nicely in my experience. So, I just take that into account when I decide that I need to use that. The other thing that I've been doing a lot of is just taking the primer out of the bottle with a brush and using it in places where basically I'm attacking panel lines. I glued in the gun bay doors, and I wanted to eliminate the panel line all the way around that joint. And so what I would do is I would just brush in a heavy layer of the microfiller primer and then come back and sand it down, and it sands down beautifully. I also use it over the top of any place where I've done a filler like the Squadron, because no matter how well you sand it and how good it looks, it's going to have some pits in it, and that microfiller primer will cover those, and it'll make it sand out where it's basically invisible. So 3 kinds of solvent primers, going from real thick and pasty down to the thickness of milk, basically, depending on the situation. The other thing that I've been using is Perfect Plastic Putty. It's also got its uses, especially when you need a real thin material that you can just brush in and be real precise with, and then don't want to have to sand it to level it out. Because what you can do is I will thin it with a little bit of UMP thinner. You can use water, but the alcohol evaporates pretty quickly, and that helps it set up fast. And so what I'll do is I'll thin it out to like the consistency of I don't know, pancake batter. And then you can brush it into places like these panel lines, which I wanted to fill but not completely eliminate. I want just a hint of them to still be there. So what I do then is, and I know a lot of you guys have done this, is go back after the filler sets up and basically just wipe it off, and it stays in the gap that you're trying to fill. But a lot of people use a Q-tip with spit on it, and that works really good. But what I've found is that the degree to which the gap is still going to show is dependent upon how wet you get the material as you're rubbing it off. And with a spit moistened Q-tip, you can wash almost all of it out of a gap like a panel line in a hurry. And then it's almost like you didn't do anything. And you don't notice that until after you've laid down some paint. So what I've been doing is putting a little bit of UMP thinner on a paper towel. Okay, I had to go dump my phone. That's one of the disadvantages of using my iPhone. It's better video quality, but I don't have as much storage space, which is good because it's self-limiting on the amount of time that I can spend flapping my lips. So anyway, I'll try and get this wrapped up and not ramble on too much more. What I was saying is that I use the paper towel moistened with thinner and just scrub off the perfect plastic putty. And the way that I keep it from getting too wet and washing out is as soon as I feel it start to move, it's kind of gradual. At first it doesn't seem like it's doing anything, and then all of a sudden it just starts flying off of there. And that's when I move to a different area and let the first area dry just a little bit. And so that way I gradually work it off. And what I end up with then is, you can see it pretty good here on the bottom, is my panel lines have a nice layer in there, and hopefully they'll be real subtle when I lay down my color coat and not be completely filled in. So those are all the materials that I'm using for filling. Now, once you've picked the material to put in there, you got to decide how you're gonna sand it down. And again, I think that's a matter of what works best in each situation. But what I find myself using the most is I've got one of these sanding sponges, which I believe this one is a 240 grit. I also use UMP thinny sticks. These are great, like especially the small end, because you can get it in there and kind of do like this, and the flex of it just puts enough pressure that it'll take the material off pretty quickly. And I also use one of my favorite things, 4/0 steel wool, which puts a really nice satin finish on it, and it gives you a great surface for your color coat. Now, I ended up doing a little bit more than I wanted to on this one, and this is something maybe, I don't know, maybe some of you guys have experienced and have some ideas about. This has been a completely different experience from building the Hasegawa 132nd P51. But there's one thing that's happened on both of them that's a complete mystery to me. And that is, when I spray primer right in here at the wing root, I don't know what causes it, but it ends up being fuzzy. I don't know any other way to describe it. It's horrible. I mean, I had a lot of problems with the primer on this one, mostly because I let the spray gun get too dirty, but that wasn't what was happening here. It just got real fuzzy, and when you come back later, you can almost rub it off with your finger, but it does leave a sort of a nubbly surface, and I've had hell getting in there and finishing that wing root without completely obliterating the rivets and the things that I want to preserve. So I don't know what the deal is with that. I feel like it must have something to do with like airflow inside of here, and the size of the spray fan, and the flow rate and all that. But who knows? I would just be curious to know if anybody else has ever experienced that. When it happened on the Hasegawa kit, it was an enamel primer that I was airbrushing out of the same airbrush. So, but anyway, you can work it all out. It just takes time and elbow grease, and on you go. As I've been doing this work over the last few days, there's been a couple of things that have really helped me out a lot that I wanted to mention because they're going to be like my nominations for modeling tool of the year. One is Silly Putty. Holy crap, I wish I had bought this stuff sooner. But it's been fantastic. If you look, like right here, I've got this thing filled in with a big hunk of Silly Putty, and it's great because I left the thing sitting upside down overnight, and it practically conformed itself perfectly into that cavity, but it doesn't leave any residue. And so far, it seems to stand up to even the lacquer pretty well. It also has really been a lifesaver this will be hard to see, but right here, I'm going to have to come in later and install the exhaust stacks. And I know from experience with Tamiya kits that the fit on that would be completely screwed up because it's a little tiny rectangular tab that goes into a slot. And one layer of paint would be all it would take to make it impossible to put those in. So I've got silly putty stuffed in all 12 of those little slots so that they won't get any paint in there. And not only will the pieces fit, but I'll be able to use Tamiya extra thin on the bare plastic when I go to actually glue those in. The other thing that I've been using that I really like that is, I don't know if it's really old school or not, but it's good stuff. And that is 3M fine line tape. This stuff is the bomb. It's what you know, hot rod guys and you know, people who do real serious airbrush work like that use to lay out stripes. And so for things like masking a canopy, if you don't have your Edward masks, you know, or if you've got to lay out a curve, the stuff is fantastic because it's a truly flexible vinyl tape and it's super thin, and you know, it'll conform to a compound curve, which is something that masking tape will never do. So anyway, very useful stuff, and you know, you guys might find some use for it in your own workshop. So what's next? This is probably going to be the last update until the final, because after this I'm into sort of the thing that, you know, the paint work, and that's what's really going to be the make or break on this project. And I'm going to be in unknown territory. I'm using some paint that I've never used before. I am also learning to create my own decals, and this is my little test mule that I've been doing to learn how to make those, get them printed, and how to apply them, and all of that. Because what I did on this project is I have created the graphic scheme for this racer in Photoshop. I downloaded some line drawings of a Mustang and then brought it inside of Photoshop and created you know, all of the colors and everything in there, and I've designed my own decals. And so, you know, all of this work that I've done so far is not going to mean shit unless I pull off this next part. So, you know, now's where it starts to get scary, and, you know, is this really going to all work out? And I'm going to find out just how big of a chunk I've bitten off. But I'm learning a lot from it, and it's all going to be to the good, and it's stuff that I'll carry on with me to, you know, whatever other projects I do. But it's starting to get real. So, you know, hopefully it'll all work out good. I think that's really about it, and I should probably just shut my trap and maybe post a few photographs and I'll let you guys move on to more productive things. But anyway, I definitely appreciate you guys hanging out and watching and following along with what I'm doing, and I really appreciate Andy for putting this thing on. It came at a good time for me. Dude, this is the first time in 5.5 years that I have worked this hard and this continuously on anything. You know, for me, 100 hours of continuous effort in 3 weeks is a pretty big deal. And I know that wasn't part of your plan, but I really appreciate it. So anyway, here's a few photographs, and as always, thanks again. Much love, guys.